Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Lost Love Stories. I'm your host, Pam Baker, and I'm really excited today because I have someone that I've gotten to know because she's friends with my son and his girlfriend, and really great friends. And so I've had the pleasure of having her at my lake house and just really getting to spend some time with her. And so I want to welcome Kalea Perez to the show today to share the story of her mom. So welcome, Kalea.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I am really happy to have you. So, we've talked a little bit about your mom over cocktails at the lake.
Yes.
And I just knew I wanted to have her story shared with everyone and just, share your relationship with her too. So let's just start. I mean, start from the beginning. Like, tell us about your mom, who she was and, just relationships, your childhood, favorite memories, stuff like that.
Yeah. My mom, her name was Amy Takayama Perez. She was a force. Her and I were, little versions of each other. I think everybody would probably attest to the fact that, wherever she was, I was not far behind.
You're sorry to interrupt you. You and your brother? So the 2
Yes.
of you?
Yep.
Okay.
So
So
it's
you're
just
you're the only
me.
girl.
Yep, just me, my younger brother. My parents, met when they were, in elementary school, middle school age. My dad was born in Puerto Rico, my mom was born in Hawaii, and then both of their dad's jobs moved them to New Hampshire, where they were neighbors on the same street, and ended up playing kickball together on the
Aw.
weekdays. My dad soon developed a crush on my mom, and they started dating in middle school, and were together ever since. So their love story was like growing up watching like a rom-com. It was the craziest thing. They were total soulmates. It was really cool growing up and like getting to see that in real life.
Yeah.
Um, and she was the best person. Um, she was smart, she was really great with her words, she was kind, she was always, like, extending the table for others, um, she just was the best, um, and she was really big on family. I mean, we did everything together, and I think that's something that Gavin and I became close friends over because much like you guys, like, our family unit, we just did everything together all the time, and, even when I was hanging out with my friends, like, they were always coming over to my house. My mom never wanted us to leave, like,
Mhm.
did everything together all the time, and so that's why I ended up going to the College of Charleston, and soon after, my parents ended up moving to Charleston, a couple years after.
So you went to college and then they moved there?
Yeah, we just couldn't be away from each other. We all wanted to be so close to each other. So, yeah, my parents followed me down to Charleston, and then it was a couple years after when my mom got diagnosed with breast cancer, and when everything kinda changed from there. So
Um, we'll get into the breast cancer diagnosis in a minute, but it's funny because I'm listening to you and what I've learned since John died is that people have, I call it revisionist history, right? They really focus on the highlight reels and um it's not necessarily real life, it's the highlight reels, but I feel I didn't know your mom, but I just from talking to you in the past and just hearing you now, those aren't highlight reels, like, that's, like, actually legitimate life reels, like, that was your mom, like, fairy tale land.
yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
Um,
totally. No,
yeah,
sh
how did they end up from Hawaii to New Hampshire?
Yeah, my grandfather got a job, well, originally, my grandfather was in the Air Force. He was born in Hawaii, born and raised in Hawaii, and then was stationed in Vermont, actually, and that's where he met my grandmother.
Okay.
So he was, this 6'2" Asian man in Vermont, stuck out like a sore thumb, and
And
met my
you know this, but not everybody does. I grew up in Vermont,
Yep.
so yeah,
Yeah,
not the
not
standard demographic there.
No, not many of those in Vermont, and met my little French Canadian grandmother in Vermont, and started a family soon after. She took the leap and moved to Hawaii with him, and that's where my mom was born, and then, um, had a few kids and decided it was pretty rough out there, doing it all by herself, and so that's when they moved back to the States. He got a job in New Hampshire, and at the same time, ironically enough, my dad's family was doing the same thing and moving from Puerto Rico to the States, and so it was kind
Also not like a normal, like,
No.
"I'm gonna move from Puerto Rico to New England."
Yeah, no, these 2 little
Yeah,
island kids, it was, like,
yeah.
craziest, like, invisible string theory.
Yes, totally pulling
Yeah.
them toward each other. That's
Yeah, it
crazy.
was it was the craziest thing, brought them together from, 2 totally different parts of the world, and they literally lived 1 house apart from each other. My mom's parents actually still live in that house today, so it's really awesome because I get to go back and, see, like, the middle school where my mom was, like, president, and I get to, walk the same streets that she was walking and see her bus stop and see her bedroom and everything, so it's
Which
really
also sounds like a part of a rom-com. I
I
mean,
know,
it is
literally. Yeah,
insane. That's insane.
yeah, I'm
Oh
really
my
lucky.
god. So
Yeah.
you moved to Charleston. You went to college Charleston, which of course is
Mm,
where you met Gavin and Yana. And then they moved down, and then your mom worked for the college. She ended up working for the College of Charleston?
yep, so all while growing up, well, actually, I'll back up. So my mom, went to George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. I'm originally from Virginia, so born and raised, and she went to George Mason University, was a student there, graduated from there, same as my dad, and was working in the admissions office, all throughout, her student career, and then stuck with it and, ended up making a career out of it. And so she worked at Mason for almost 25 years and ended up finishing there as the dean of admissions. And then during COVID, a position opened up at the College of Charleston, in admissions for the VP of marketing and enrollment. And my mom was very much a creature of habit. Obviously, we
Mhm.
didn't, we had been in the same house for 20 years. She had been
Yeah,
in the same job for 20 years. But I think during COVID, I don't know, something came over her. She just, I don't know, was ready for change. And obviously, I was in Charleston. We, were very close. And I don't know, I think she just wanted to take a risk. I think, COVID was a weird time. She saw that as an opportunity. And so she interviewed, ended up getting the role and just kind of went for it.
that's awesome.
And so in June or July of COVID, moved my family down to Charleston, took the job, and started working in admissions for the College of Charleston. That was
Perfect.
who moves in the middle of COVID? I don't know, but it was
I
crazy.
Yeah, she's a creature of habit, and then picks the craziest time in the history of
Yeah.
life to move.
Turn the
My
heat up
god.
high, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's a great story. Okay, so then then the diagnosis. So let's talk about that. Do you remember? I mean, I know sometimes these things are like a total blur and you're like, "Bleh," but, like, how old were you? What was she having symptoms? Was it out of the blue? What what
I
happened?
Yeah, it's crazy because it it's like a blur, but I also at the same time, I remember a lot of it. Um, I was a junior in college. They had just moved to Charleston, so she was super excited, because she used to always come and visit. And so, we would go to dinners, we would go to the beach, and she loved, like, exploring, getting to know Charleston. Um, so I was a junior. I remember it was the summertime, and she was always really good about being in tune with her body. She was a really healthy person, always, did her annual checkups and everything like that. Um, and I remember she had felt something, like in her armpit that was irregular. And I remember her actually coming to me and being like, this doesn't feel right. And I want you to know what this feels like in case it's anything. I want you to know what this looks like and what this feels like,
Wow. That's
um,
forward thinking.
just in
Wow.
case. Yeah.
Uh,
And I was like, "Okay." Um, and so I remember it was right around the time my brother was graduating from high school, actually, and she was like, "I'm not telling anybody because, this is a very happy time, but for your own safety, I want you to know." And so my brother graduated, we, did the whole graduation party and everything. She put on, her hostess hat and a smile. Flash forward a couple weeks, and I remember her calling me, and the doctor, had called her in for test results. And I remember her calling me, and she was really upset, and I remember thinking, you know, "We don't know the results yet. Why are you so upset? Let's, be optimistic about this." And I'll never forget, she was like, "They don't call you in to talk when the results are good." And that kinda, like, sent me back because I had never thought about it like that. I was kinda taken aback. And so I went and picked her up from her office at the College of Charleston, and met my dad at the hospital, and, I was like, "I'm gonna go in with you, and hold your hand during this appointment the entire time." And she would not let me go in with her. She was like, "I'm gonna go in with your dad. I need you to go home to your brother and stay there." Um, and I think that was her way of, "I'm gonna figure this out and find out how we're going to even explain this to you kids."
mm,
Um, and I think to, figure out how to put on a brave face before I even come
yeah.
outside and try and have this conversation. Because my mom was very emotional. I mean, she would cry at, like, a commercial, so
Mhm.
I think part of it too
Yeah,
was her collecting herself before she even
that
came to
makes
us.
sense to, like, not feel like her most vulnerable
Yeah,
or feel like she couldn't be her most vulnerable to out of
right.
protection for you. That makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
processed it probably before
Yeah.
processing it with us. And so I went home to my brother. I remember we were sitting on the couch just, like, in silence. It felt like ages went by before, she came in and told us the results. And we lived right across from the hospital, so it was like a 5-minute drive home. She finally came back, and that's when she told us she had been diagnosed. At the time, I think it was only stage 2. So the plan was, she was gonna do chemo, she was gonna do radiation, and a lumpectomy, and we were gonna, she was very optimistic. She was like, "We're gonna attack this thing. It's gonna be a blip in our story, and it's gonna be fine. We're gonna be great. We're gonna be celebrating by next summer, and it's all gonna be great." Um, and I mean, it was obviously very emotional. Um, and I just remember thinking, you never you never think those things are gonna happen to you until they do. And then it's just your entire world shifts, and it really puts in perspective very quickly the things
Mhm.
that matter
Yeah,
and the
very
things
much.
that don't.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, just like that, um, everything kinda changed, and yeah. It was
What
crazy.
it it is crazy, and I wonder if it was the same for you in our house when John was diagnosed. Um, everything everything did change because it changes your perspective, like you said, but it also changed the dynamics in the house. It changed how we lived. It changed everything. For us, everything, like, full focus went to John's health,
Mhm.
you know, all the meals, all the scheduling, everything was around how we could optimize his life and keep him alive the longest. Did you guys have that kind of shift? Like where, like for us, dietary and like everything became full focus on keeping him alive.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you had that sense?
Yeah, ours was exactly the same, actually. Our dynamic changed and honestly never went back to it still hasn't gone back
Oh, wow.
to how it ever was. Um, yeah, our full focus was on her health because honestly, she got sick, and I think much like you guys probably, she got sick.
Yeah.
Like, she went through chemo, and chemo gave her a run for her money. It was not a walk in the park. We had a lot of complications during chemo and during radiation. She was throughout her journey, she was in remission, I think, for probably 5 minutes, and then we were back in chemo. Um, we tried a lot of different drugs, and it was her entire journey was a lot of, like, 2 steps forward, 10 steps back. So yeah, there was a huge shift in our household. Um, and we owe a lot of it to my dad. I mean, my dad took on the role of caretaker in a heartbeat. He put everything on the back burner to be like her bedside nurse, without hesitation. I mean, he was up all hours of the night, doing, whatever it took. He was cooking, cleaning, doing every meal. He was at every appointment, taking notes. I remember there was like binders upon binders of
Mhm.
stuff
Wow.
that he had organized. And I remember talking to my mom, and she would sit there and cry and be like, I don't know how single mothers do this, or people whose, first language isn't English. Like, I don't know how people do this, because she's like, I can't even keep my eyes awake, like,
Yeah.
open during these appointments.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would do without your father. I don't know how other people are doing this. Like, it
Yeah.
makes no sense to me. So, yeah, it totally changed everything. Um, 'Cause, I mean, usually my parents were like a tag team, and it's not to say, obviously my mom was doing everything she could, but it took a lot
Yeah.
of,
She's
my
surviving.
yeah, she's busy,
Mhm.
yeah, literally
Yeah.
staying awake.
Yeah.
I also think being the oldest daughter, I definitely put a ton of pressure on myself too, and I think that's something that, like, Gavin and I have bonded over a lot, just being the oldest children. Um, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to kind of fill those shoes and take over that role. Um,
You were similar ages, I think, too. How old was Gavin? He was
yeah,
because John died when he graduated. I mean,
yeah, when we were, like,
senior year.
yeah, early 20s.
Yeah.
Um, and I think especially as women too, it's been an interesting dynamic shift being in a house with all men. Because I put a lot of pressure on myself to, play companion to my dad and play mother to my brother, uh, and just fill a lot of different roles. And I tried to do that, while she was still here, and I try and do that while she's gone. And I think I struggled. I still struggle with it a lot, but I think I struggled with it a lot while she was here, while still trying to be just like a junior in college,
Yeah.
and, a, recruitment chair for my sorority, and,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. finished my capstone and all this. So yeah, there was a huge dynamic shift in my house, in my college life, in my friendships, in my relationship. I was in a serious relationship at the time. I mean, it shifted everything. Um, and it still has, and it still will.
Yeah.
But, you roll with it.
Yeah. I think I always describe a cancer diagnosis as you you literally have to learn a new language. It's learning a foreign language because nobody knows what any of that shit means, right? And but on a time crunch. You're not just like, "Oh, I'm gonna pull up Babbel today and take a little lesson." It's like, "I need to learn all of this now, like yesterday." And to your point, I remember being at Duke one time when we went up for a clinical trial, and this was one of the most heartbreaking things 'cause, our story, we had a full team, thank God. Again, just having your dad and you and your brother was young, but trying to do this, we had John's sisters, everybody had a role,
Mhm.
and that was hard enough because each role was like a full-time job. But then you take the people that don't have a team. And I remember being at Duke and this sweet little old man was sitting there with his manila envelope and John was taken back and he had to be at least 75. And he came up to me and I was just in the waiting room. So he just came up to me and he asked me, was that your husband that just went back? I said, yeah. Does he have glioblastoma? I said, yes. And he said, my wife, they lived in Myrtle Beach. And so they just had like a general cancer doctor there. And his, it was like you could tell he didn't even really know how to use the computer. He had tried printing stuff off and he's like, can you help me understand what all this stuff means? And he had stuff on bee pollen and all this stuff. Like he was trying to find all the things. And I helped him as best I could. But that's what I was thinking. I'm like, where are his people? Like, where's his team? And not everybody has it, obviously. We're very lucky. But to me, that was just so heartbreaking because his wife didn't even want to be there. She'd already given up. He was like, I'm trying so hard just to keep her alive. And I don't even know what this stuff means.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh my god." But, like, the people that do go through that, it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's
It's
heartbreaking.
eye-opening to see that world. Just
Mhm.
I didn't even realize what the cancer world looked like, and I know my dad puts a lot of pressure and has a lot of guilt because he didn't know what that world looked like either. I mean, we have no history of cancer in our family. We had no experience with any of this. And my dad always says, if we had the chance to do it again, we would have gone to this doctor, we would have tried this clinical trial, we would have researched this. And so I know he always, he still thinks of all the things that he could have done differently. And obviously you know, it doesn't matter now because the outcome is was what it was going to be. But it's just crazy how, complex that world is.
It is
And
insane.
yeah, it's really hard when you don't have all the resources and the tools.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, you're under the gun. You can't possibly know all the things. You just can't.
Right. Yeah.
I wanna go back to, you were a junior, and you said, it shifted everything in your life, and also what you said about everything else changing your perspective on life and putting things in perspective. I'm assuming, you were in a sorority before your mom was diagnosed. You're living your best life. Like, go out for drinks with your friends, do all the fun stuff, the party stuff. That had to be a big change too, because as we know, when there's a diagnosis, your friends will rally and they'll be with you. But what was that like for you? I'm assuming, you're home with your mom taking care and still trying to live somewhat of a normal college life. But, as your friends are, going out to the bars and doing, I mean, there had to be some sense of like, what the hell? Like, they're just living their lives. no blame, no shade or anything, living their lives, and you're now in this life or death situation, and, there's probably relationship drama where you're like, "Who fucking cares about whether or
Yeah.
not that guy's calling you back?" Like, my mom's dying, you know? Do you remember going through that and having any kind of feelings about that?
Yeah, totally. And I I definitely I tried to do it all. Um, I tried to keep up with doing all the sorority stuff, keeping up with the classes while still being home every single day. Um, I did not let off the gas at all. I just tried to keep up with all of it. And I was exhausted. I was so freaking exhausted. Um, and I didn't want her to see any of that. And I remember I would go over there and I would just lay with her and I would try so hard to like keep my eyes open. I was just so exhausted from trying to do all of it. And yeah, it was really difficult trying to just maintain all of those different roles. Um, I think I think it almost was harder trying to maintain those roles in my grief though than it was when she was here because I would look at her and like I was motivated all over again. Like my reason was right there. I think having to kind of step into those roles and find the motivation day to day now in my grief almost feels harder. And I don't know if you guys feel that way, but trying to, you know, be a 20-year-old, trying to uphold my roles as a daughter, as a friend, as a granddaughter, as a girlfriend, whatever it may be, almost feels more difficult now because your why is not physically in front of you anymore. Um, so honestly, thinking about it now, it was really difficult in college, yes, and I was really exhausted, but it almost feels more difficult now, and I find it more troubling to keep up with the workload of all of it in my present day life. And I've
Interesting.
honestly recently found it a lot more difficult to keep up with too.
Okay, let's talk about that. When John died, I mean, you probably know this. I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan, but when John died and the song I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, her
My
song,
favorite.
I know, because that was like my theme song. I was like, got my
Yep.
happy face on. Nobody knows that I'm dying inside and that every day is a full battle to get through the day, but I'm getting it done. I'm getting
Yeah.
it done, I'm doing it all, and I look like I'm having the best time of my life.
Yep.
This thing sucks. So that was like my theme song. But, I wanna okay, we're gonna back up for a second. Your mom okay, so I imagine it was had to be rather confusing because when you say stage 2 and your mom comes in, which is a normal thing for I think moms to do is be like, "We got this. It's gonna be good. We can do this." But especially stage 2, it wasn't stage 4.
Mhm.
There had to be some false sense of hope. Not false. It was probably like legit hope. And then it didn't turn out that way. So from diagnosis to her passing, like what was the time frame there?
Yeah, so she was sick for about 2 years, and like I said, it was pretty rough. I think I wanna say we tried out it was probably like 9 different drugs, and she had all sorts of complications along the way. And at the beginning, I think it totally was, I mean, you're right, it wasn't a false sense of hope, but it was almost like a childlike sense of hope, um, where you're just so naive to it. You don't know anything but an outcome of survival. Like, yeah, she's gonna be fine. Like, obviously, she's not going anywhere. Um, and my dad was really good about, instilling that in us, and never once did our hope waver because of him. Um, and honestly, I'm really thankful for that because we never, without I remember my mom always saying, "Without hope, we don't have anything." And so Kai and I, my brother, never I think never really thought about any other outcome than her being okay until it happened.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember it wasn't until probably it wasn't until probably the last, like probably the last, like, 6 months, it was actually around the time that Gavin and I, and Yana, all of us went to Spain.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
we all went on a group trip to Spain, and I remember it was because a lot of us didn't get to study abroad. And by the time it was because of COVID, but by the time our senior year came around, we were able to travel for COVID, but I was so nervous to do it because I didn't wanna leave my mom. So then after college, a lot of us were like, "Well, let's just take a impromptu trip." So we went and visited a friend in Spain, and I had worked up the courage at the time because I was like, "My mom's feeling a little bit better. Let me just, take a leap of faith and do it. It's just a quick trip. Let me just try it out." So I went to Spain with my friends. While I was on the trip to Spain, I got a call from my mom and dad. They had gone to an appointment, and while I was there, I got a call that the cancer had spread to her bones, and basically we like didn't know what we were going to do next. Like, doctors were kind of running out of options at this point. We had tried so many different drugs. Um and she was getting weaker, and we really didn't know what to do. But still, like, my dad never really was super upfront about any other option again than, like, she's gonna be okay. Um, and I think because in his mind too, he had convinced
Mhm.
himself that was the outcome, which again, I'm thankful for. Um, but looking back now, um, again, you don't realize it until you're in it. I think I think she knew, and I think we probably knew. I mean, she was down to, like, 100 pounds. She did not look like herself. She wasn't really eating. She was, not walking, without assistance. She was falling a lot. She was basically staring, like, death in the face, and I think the only motivation to, like, stay there was us.
Yeah.
Um, and I think deep down, we all probably knew what was coming, but, nobody's gonna say it out loud. Nobody's gonna talk
Mhm.
about it. Nobody's gonna accept it. Um, but I definitely remember having a few moments where I would be sitting with her and just remember thinking to myself, like, if that were to ever happen, I am extremely glad that I have this moment with her. That's not gonna
Mm.
happen, but if that
Mhm.
were to ever happen,
Yeah.
I I'm gonna remember this for the rest of my life. I remember having, like, a ton of moments like that, and it wasn't until June 2023, her younger brother, my uncle, got married in San Diego, and all she kept saying, I mean, she was really sick by this point, but all she kept saying is, "I'm gonna make it to this wedding. Like, I'm
Fun.
going to make it to
Mhm.
this wedding." She helped plan it, and it was her baby brother, so she was like, "I'm going to make it to this wedding." I remember we had practiced, like, we even practiced going out to a restaurant because she hadn't been out to a restaurant in forever, so she practiced, like, sitting in a restaurant,
Wow.
and, like, being in public, because that's, like, the point that we were at, and, sure enough, I literally, looking back, don't know how we did this, but she somehow managed to get on a plane, fly to
Wow.
San from Charleston to San Diego, went to the wedding, sat through the wedding, it was she had a difficult time, but she went to the wedding, came back, and I think it was, like, maybe a week later, she passed away, July of 2023. Um, yeah, it was super quick, July 18th. But she made it to the wedding, and it was
Wow.
yeah, it was super quick, but it was definitely a quick decline, and I think her extended family, like her siblings and my grandparents would all probably say the same, like, she didn't look the same for a while, and I think we all probably knew what was gonna happen, but I don't know, she was just such a powerhouse that I think at the end of the day, we kinda always thought she was gonna pull through somehow.
Something. She's gonna be able to pull something out.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I talked to Gavin, and it kinda sounds similar to John, where it's like kinda 9 lives almost,
Yeah.
they surprise you so many
Mhm.
times that it's like, it can't be them. It
Right.
wouldn't be them, you know?
Right. Yeah, there's no way.
Yeah,
Way.
right. There's no way.
That's crazy. It is really interesting. I'm, like, thinking about John did the same thing. There's so many similarities when his uncle died and we went to LA, and he was again, it was, like, just like it's just like your mom. Like, just wanted to go out to see the family and be there, and it was again, he needed assistance walking. I mean, all the things. I just remember being at that where and it was hard for everybody to see him that way. People that hadn't seen him, but it was also really good because they got to see him, and many of them for the last time. And that was im- obviously important to John, obviously important to your mom. And you hear that all the time, right? Like people are like, that's their goal. They just got to make it to this. And then they'll be like, okay, but it is hard to, walk that fine line of, like, reality versus hopefulness versus not letting the person feel like you've given up hope. Like, I struggled with that a lot with John, and there were times, like, as the wife, like, we had to get things in order. We had to have hard conversations, but it was always like the same with just what you're saying with your moments that you're cementing those moments in your head. On the other side, I was like, we have to have this, but how do I say it in a way that's not like, okay, you're going to be dead soon. So we got to make sure we get this done. Cause I never wanted to give him the feeling that I didn't believe he could beat it.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. But when you're looking at the reality, you're like, oh God, but it's such a crazy balancing act, you know?
Yeah, it totally is. I had trained myself um, to not really show much emotion in front of her. Um, I mean, obviously, it was jarring to see her that way, especially the first few times I saw her, like, without her hair and stuff, and when I would see her, when she started to lose a lot of weight and stuff, but I was so afraid of crying in front of her and showing any kind of, like, sad emotion because I knew me showing that would hurt her more,
Yeah.
and so I compartmentalized a lot in front of her, um, so that it didn't kind of, like, crush her more, um, but it was difficult. It definitely was difficult, um and I think I'm still kind of working through, like,
Yeah.
how to even how the times to compartmentalize and the times
Mhm.
not to?
Yeah, very much. I totally understand that. That being said, were there times, I did the same thing, with John. I know what I did because I always describe it as being like a rain barrel, and you can like the emotions can come and come and come, and you can manage them, manage them, manage them. Then they get to that top of the rainbow. They got to go somewhere. And so, what do you do with that? And so, for me, I know I'd wait till everybody was sleeping in the middle of the night, and I'd like creep out of my room, and I'd just put on my headphones and listen. There was a particular song I would just listen to that I knew I would just cry and cry and cry and cry until there were no more tears. Like, empty the rain barrel, start over. Okay. Did you have any like I say coping mechanisms or strategies for managing your emotions so you could keep them in check in front of your mom?
Yeah, I didn't at first,
Mm.
and I think that was the problem. Had to learn I definitely had to learn, like, who my outlets were, what my outlets were, because I think historically I've been really good at just keeping them all to myself, and, I'm like, "If you want it done, just do it yourself." And this was not something you can do all on your own, and I'm still learning that. Um, I learned, the people that I could trust. I learned, that therapy is a great tool. I
Mhm.
learned that exercise is a great tool. Um, but I definitely learned that, you can't hold all of that in. And I definitely have my moments where, I let all of those emotions overflow, and there's definitely days where I just kinda lean into my grief. Um, and to your point, I just cry and I'll talk to her, or I'll just go for a walk. I feel really connected to her, like, outside, or by the water. She loved, like, the beach and the lake and stuff, and she always joked that she was solar powered, so a lot of the times I'll go to the beach, to feel close to her, or, like, the Battery, downtown and stuff. So yeah, there's definitely days where I'll lean into it, but at the beginning, I would not say that was my strength. I definitely kept it in, and I think, a lot of my relationships maybe suffered because of it. Uh, it was a growing pain for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely wanna get into I think there's a lot of growth in grief, and, you're already talking about some of that. So now, we're coming up, you're 2.5, almost 3, 2.5 years in. Where do you I mean, you're also at a very pivotal time of growth as a young adult who didn't have some major tragedy in your life. It's a pivotal time of growth anyway. So compare that to like the growth that you've had going through that process with your mom and then post losing her. I mean, there is grief along the way. You start in a grief, and I think you start in a grief cycle once the diagnosis comes. Like it's almost um um what do they call it? It's like, precipitory or like, grief, it's like it's the pre-grief. You're working your way toward there because you're kind of it's anticipatory. I think that's
Anticipatory
the word.
grief, yeah.
Anticipatory grief.
Yeah.
Yeah, where, you're kinda living in that pre-cycle
Yeah.
or whatever the cancer time is, and then you go into full bore. And, so, talk about that. You obviously took on all these new roles. So there's growth in that, you know, there's growth in that. There's a lot of change in that. But where do you see the greatest? I don't want to say, I do want to say, I do believe there's a gift in everything. So there can be a gift in grief, but also so the growth, the gift, and then some of the big challenges that it's brought to your life that, maybe without this whole scenario, it wouldn't be quite so hard. Talk about that.
Yeah, there's been a ton of growth. It's interesting because I often think about my grief and how it has been this thing to teach me, you know, all of these lessons. And it's definitely brought me closer to my faith, but sometimes I'm like, you know, come on, God, did it have to be in
Mhm.
this shape or form? Like, you didn't have to be in this lesson. Like, could have been
Yeah.
a little bit easier. Um, but I definitely think it has taught me a lot. I've grown a ton as a person. Um, and it's funny, as I was kind of like reflecting on all of this last night, I was thinking about the ways that, grief is terrifying, um, and gut wrenching and really difficult, but also really beautiful. And I mean, it just gives you an entirely new perspective on life. Um, and I don't know, it gives you this sense of like comfort, and reassurance maybe that I've never had before. Um, I think I've always kind of struggled with, um, maybe like putting myself first, um, taking care of myself. Um, I think that's definitely been a theme that I'm learning right now in my 20s. Um, I also just got out of a pretty big relationship, and so I think I'm learning that lesson evidently more right now. Um, but doing it without my mom has definitely been interesting because I don't know, I often still hear her like talking to me, and it's weird because it's definitely sad going through it without my mom. There's a lot of times where I'm like, I just wish I could pick up the phone and call my mom.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm also I also don't really worry about the future because I'm like, I know I have somebody up there who is gonna make sure everything's okay.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I used to worry so much about the future, and I used to be just, neurotic about planning and making sure everything, was laid out. Um, and I'm a lot less like that these days. Um, and I think grief definitely taught me a lot about that. Um, but obviously it has come with its challenges too. I think every year of grief has been different. I think my first year of grief was crazy. Um, I think it was like walking in the dark, like
Ah, yeah, that's a really
just
good way of
just
describing
being
it.
in pitch black. Like, I couldn't see anything, I had no
Mhm.
idea where I was, I had no idea what was going on. Um, I just remember sitting down on Christmas and I was, like, numb. I'm like, "What is even going on? I
Yeah.
have no idea. Like, am I happy? Am I sad? I don't even know what we're doing right now."
Right.
Um, it was really hard to uphold tradition because
Yeah.
you just don't even know what's going on. You
Right.
don't know point A from point B. Um, so year 1 is weird because 'cause you're just wrapping your head around everything, I think. Um, and everybody's kinda doing it together, so you can't
Mhm.
really help each other because
Right.
no one knows what they're doing. Um, year 2 has been interesting because it's not like in grief, things get easier as they go on. They just kinda get different. Um, and, some things have gotten easier, but also some things have gotten harder. Um, I don't know, year 2 has been interesting because I think it's been a time for me to figure out the traditions that I wanna uphold. Um, but it's also been interesting because it's just me, my dad, and my brother, and I think everybody grieves very differently, and we all remember very differently, but we also had very different relationships with her. And I think especially a mother-daughter relationship is very, very different. And I think that's something that I've definitely struggled with. Um, and it's no fault to my dad or my brother, but it's just that's a relationship and a hole and a gap that can't really be filled by anybody but her.
Yeah.
Um, and so year 2 has been interesting because it's been a time for me to figure out the traditions I wanna uphold and how I want to do them, but I've kind of had to learn that it's up to me to do that, and no one else can really do it for me. And I think in the past, I've looked to other people to fill that role, and I kinda learned it's like putting a Band-Aid on a car crash almost, like, it's not gonna fill anything, um, and I've just had to accept that, it's just gonna be a gap that is forever open, and there's gonna be, pieces of her that are filled through her friends and through my uncles and my grandparents and my dad and my brother, but ultimately, it's just gonna be empty for a long time. Um, and she's still there in different ways, but, um, I think I think that's all part of acceptance. And, you know, as I grow in my grief, acceptance definitely comes, as we go on. But, um, but it's interesting because you know, I'm still I'm still a baby 2-year-old in my grief, so
Yeah. Yeah.
acceptance is still very new, you
Right,
know?
right. It is one of those things where there was a woman in our widow group, and she's a beautiful writer, and she wrote, she did a Facebook post one day, and um, um, I'm butchering it, but I thought it was such a really great analogy of grief that at the beginning, it's like you're on the shore at a beach, and the waves are like it's like you're during a storm. The waves are crash, 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 nonstop. You don't get a break from it. You don't get a break from it. So as you said, the grief doesn't go away, but maybe there's a little more time between each wave, you know?
Mhm,
The waves maybe get a little smaller, and then there's the time lapse between, so you can actually take a breath in between the the waves. And I'm in year 4, so a little bit beyond a toddler, but I can see that that makes such great sense, because it still hits. It hits when it hits, and sometimes you don't know when it's gonna hit, and it'll just be out of the blue, whether it's a song that triggers it, or um whatever it is. There's a million things that can make it hit, but maybe that time is not so frequently, and the wave isn't quite as big, so it doesn't hit quite as hard. And maybe that's because we have learned to manage the grief in a
mhm.
healthy way, so it's not all consuming. It's not all taking over our whole bodies. I just thought the way she wrote that was really, it just made sense. It just makes sense forever. There is nothing that's gonna fill that hole. Nothing. But through learning how to live with it, again, in a healthy way, doing the work that needs to be done on ourselves, and with therapy, and, however we can manage that, just, it 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 becomes, I'm using the word twice, but a very manageable way to live with that loss, with that gaping hole, recognizing it, but also honoring it, and also moving forward with it, versus being stuck and lost in that grief forever, which does happen. It does happen
Yeah,
to people.
yeah,
So I think it's awesome that you're doing the work and doing therapy, and it's really, really so important, because you got a lot of years ahead of you, and just to not be stuck there with such a great loss is, it's important. And as we all say this, but your mother wouldn't want you to be stuck there. She wants you to live your best life, and she wants to watch you live in your best life. And it's awesome that you're doing that. It's really huge.
Thank
It's
you. I
awesome.
appreciate it.
Yeah. When you're talking about traditions, do you feel as like I'll say I felt as the mom, I was in charge of Christmas and the holidays anyway, but I felt a lot of pressure to make everything feel normal and as though nothing had changed, even though something very major changed. Do you feel, because your mom was probably played that role, do you feel the pressure to then take on her role for your dad and your brother to
Yeah.
make sure things are, because that's a
Yeah.
lot. That's a whole different dynamic. Being
Yeah.
being the oldest is a natural thing to do that, but also being the daughter
Yeah.
does like a double down.
No,
Like, how did that?
it's funny that you say this because everybody all of my family who's gonna listen to this is probably screaming at their phones right now. Because this has been the theme of why I go to therapy for every single for the last 2 years. Um, yeah, I definitely put a ton of pressure on myself to make every holiday and every gathering, every get together, exactly the same as it was. Um, I still, made every breakfast casserole
Mhm.
and we were still gonna go to every Christmas caroling event.
Mhm.
And yeah, I tried really hard to make everything like exactly the same. Um, and I exhausted myself doing it. Um, and I put so much pressure on expectation and was ultimately, let down when it didn't feel the same. And it ended up hurting kind of like twice as bad. Um, and I remember just going to therapy and being like, what do I do? Like this is terrible. Like I tried so hard and nothing is working and I don't know what to do. And I'm exhausted because I put all this time and all this money and all this effort and it was like that's the problem right there is
Right.
that you are, juggling all of these different plates and hats um and it's never gonna be the same. Um, and I think I did that a lot too in my relationship where I was always trying to kinda, like, micromanage and plan everything to I've always been a planner. I've followed my mom's footsteps where I'm always trying to take care of people and, she was, like, an exceptional planner, an exceptional host. She's a lot like you, where, like, she was so good at just, like, having everything together, and I think I tried to maintain a lot of that, but then I look in the mirror and I'm, at the time I was 23, and
Mm.
even now I'm only 25, like,
Yeah.
I can't do all of that. I don't
Yeah, because
have
your
the
mom
lived
probably
ex
wasn't doing that at 23.
Right, I
Of
don't
course
have the
not.
lived experience, I just can't do that.
Right.
I'm exhausting myself. Um, and I don't think it's until now where, 1, I'm really, kind of processing my grief being in the 2nd year of it, and 2, now being out of a relationship and on my own where I'm kind of, I'm by myself and I'm really being forced to have to take care of myself and have to prioritize myself and put myself first instead of plan for other people and, put together all of these things. And it's kind of made me realize that at the end of the day, those things aren't really the most important things in the room, And they're not the things that, you know, made those moments special. She was the magic in the room, and she's no longer here. And, you know, like I was saying earlier, there's pieces of her that can still bring that magic, and it's, my family, it's her friends, it's my friends, and that's what's most important, and it hasn't really been until now where I've really had to sit in it, um, and I've been forced to, you know, prioritize myself and take care of myself and not other people, that I've actually been able to learn that. But it was a hard lesson for sure because I've just been so used to taking care of other people and planning
Mm.
for other people my entire life. And I think it definitely was a control thing, and it definitely was, I think, a way for me at the beginning to, um, I don't know, to in hopes to like hang on to her, and in hopes that, it would bring back some type of feeling of her, but, we all know that that just isn't the reality.
Yeah. It's such a another little balancing act, right? Of
Mhm,
honoring her and her memory, but not doing it at the expense of your sanity and your
mhm,
own happiness and finding the balance. I know that for me, one of the things, people have said to me, like, well, all the things I do and how I can uh get so much done and um whatever. I fully admit what I do is very much like you, is it's 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 a defense mechanism, controlling all the things, filling the whole schedule, doing all the things doesn't leave a whole lot of time to
mhm.
sit in your emotions
Yeah,
and process and feel. If you just are maxed out all the time and trying to do everything perfectly and making everybody else have a magical experience, you don't have time to deal with your own shit that's happening on the inside. And I've learned that over time too. So kudos to you for you're like right now at 25 where I'm coming up on 55 where I'm just learning that. That's amazing. You're going to have a great life. You're going to have a really great life now. Like a lot of lessons I had to learn over time that weren't necessarily good for me. That's I say I just said this, you can find a silver lining in every situation, no matter how dire, no matter how tragic, no matter how horrible. You can find a silver lining if you look hard enough. And I would say that's a very strong silver lining for you. That's a good one.
true. That's true.
That's true. Well, let's talk a little bit about you know this. Duncan was he's looking at College of Charleston. So Gavin and Yana gave us a tour around campus a few weeks ago, and I got to see the bench that is your mom's bench on campus. So talk to us about the ways that her impact on other people are living on. What are some things that she's being honored, not just by you, like you're killing yourself to make sure she's honored in tradition and family experience, but what are some things that are happening with College of Charleston and George Mason and wherever else she had an impact?
Yes. Um, yeah, so they put a College of Charleston was nice enough to put a bench, on campus right down the street, from my house, actually. I venture over there quite often, and go visit her. But yeah, her legacy has been kept alive in a lot of different ways. At George Mason, during her time there, um, her whole career was really built upon, um, making sure that everybody had access to education regardless of, where you came from, what you looked like, and what your background was. And she really fully believed that. And so during her time at George Mason, she, along with the help of some others, started a couple conferences. One called the Washington Journalism and Media Conference, and then another one, the Youth Summit on the Environment. And both conferences fly out high school students, where they spend a week at George Mason. Um, and they go through simulations, and they travel, all over DC and the Washington area. And so during their time there, they're exposed to kind of like a mini simulation of college life. And it's a really great opportunity for them to meet other students, hear like keynote speakers and stuff like that. And so both conferences actually now have a scholarship in her name that they still uphold to this day. And then George Mason University itself also still has a scholarship in her name that they now have every single year. So it's been really cool to see the different ways that the university has just been able to keep her legacy alive and recognize the ways that, she would go in every day to fight for access to education. 'Cause she really did believe that wholeheartedly, and she instilled a lot of those morals and values, in my brother and I. Her, whole motto was building a bigger table. A lot of people still always say that about her. And it's been cool too since she passed, like, a lot of people on social media or even at her funeral came up to me, and a lot of people will be like, "Because your mom accepted me," or "Because your mom wrote this letter recommendation," or "Because, she did this, my whole life changed," or, "I married this person," or "I got this job," or "I moved here." Uh, and it's crazy because to me, it's just my mom,
Yeah.
but to a lot of other people, she was, like, this pivotal person that kind of changed, like, the trajectory of a lot of people's stories.
Yeah.
Um, so that was really cool to see when she passed away, just, I don't know, the reach that she had on so many different people. Um, and it speaks both, in her work and just in her interpersonal relationships. Um, so yeah, it's been really cool to see.
That's really cool because that's one of those things that I just think, uh, it's like the ripple effect. It's like the little, the beating of the moth wing. Like you don't have any way to ever measure the impact that she's had on people. There's no way to ever like cumulatively take stock of what her existence meant to people. Obviously, those stories are amazing, but when you hear them, they're so important. But like that's just a cool legacy. It's a cool legacy to even these people that don't are getting this scholarship and they don't even know who she is. They're just like, I got this scholarship, woohoo! That's awesome. But even that has a huge ripple effect because you don't know, especially the demographic that it's aimed to help, like the trickle down effect of maybe somebody going to college for the first time ever in their life and what that's going to mean to the generations below them that come after them. I mean, there's no way. That's really cool. It's just really cool. I mean, just to think about her legacy will live on for literally generations.
Yeah.
That's
No,
amazing.
it's really cool work. And, you know, it's cool because I wish she could still be here to see it all play out.
Mhm.
Um, but I know she is one way or another.
She is. She is for sure. She is. Um, well, I have a final question for you, but oh, do you have a picture of her that we can see?
I do. Actually, that one might have a glare. I'll bring this one up instead.
Oh, on the water. There she is. Oh
On
my,
the water.
I love it.
This
Oh,
was
love it.
one of our last trips before chemo, and then I have another one of her and my dad.
Oh my God, I
Yes,
love that.
those little babies.
They're gorgeous. Oh my God, I love that. I love the little
They're
sailors.
cute.
I love it. Oh, thank you for sharing those.
Thank
Um,
you.
and before I ask you your final question, anything else you want to share about your mom that we didn't talk about, or any final thoughts, or
I think final thoughts, I just wanna thank you for kind of giving me the platform, and the forum to be able to share about her. I think, as you know, I was really nervous to come on here and talk about her. I don't This is kind of the first time I've gone on something like this to talk about her, uh, and I oftentimes feel like I'm still new to grief and maybe not credible enough to speak on it.
Yeah,
Um, but I appreciate you trusting me to even speak, on my experience. Um, and you made me feel comfortable enough to even share a lot of
good,
my experiences,
good.
and, you know, talk about her and who she was. So, thank you for giving me
Oh,
the platform to do
I
so.
thank you for saying yes because I know you were very nervous. I knew you'd do an amazing job, which you did. And, my original plan for this podcast, which I had the idea like right after John died. Once I realized I had the idea after I realized nobody really talks about the people who died anymore. And I wanted it to mainly be a place for us to talk about them because their stories matter and also a place to archive it. So you have this episode forever, of just chatting about your mom, which I think is important. And I'm grateful that you came on and were brave enough to share your story and her story, and it was an honor to get to know her better. She sounds amazing, and I wish I had gotten to meet her in person, but I'm glad that I'm getting to know her through you. So I am grateful for that. But my final question that I want to ask you is: it's been almost 2.5 years. What um, what do you think your mom would say to you right now?
Hmm. I It's funny that you ask this actually because somebody asked me this question not too long ago, when I was having a hard day. And I was like, God, I wish I could just, like call up my mom. Um, and one of my friends was like, well, if you did, like, what do you think your mom would say? And I remember just breaking down because I was like, I I don't even know anymore. Like I have no idea what my mom would say. I don't like remember. I don't I don't even know. But then, when I sit down and actually think about it, obviously, I remember the things that she would say and I remember the advice that she would give. I think I think she would tell me that she's proud of me, and I think she would probably tell me to keep going. I think she would probably say just keep fucking going. I think she's probably seen that there are a lot of days where I struggle to feel like I can keep going. Um, and there's probably going to be more. Um, but I think she would tell me that she's proud of me and that she knows that I can keep going and that I'm capable of it. And and that I have no choice. I remember she used to say, I'd be like, "I don't know how I'm gonna do this. I don't know how I'm gonna do that." And she would be like, "Well, because you have to. We're gonna figure it out because we have to. We don't have any other choice." Um, and so I think she would probably reiterate the same sentiment, um, and just tell me to keep going. Um, and she would probably also tell me to keep taking care of the boys and keep
Yeah,
them in check as
yeah,
well.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
I think she would also throw that in there.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think it would be something to that degree. Um, and then she'd probably also tell me she loves me, and that hopefully she misses me down here.
I think that's exactly what she would say. Being a mom myself, I think you're spot on. And there's no question she's proud of what you're doing and how you're taking care of everybody, but also very importantly, how you're taking care of yourself. A lot of people get lost and they don't take the time to care for themselves, and that's so important. So you're doing awesome, and
Thank
you
you.
are awesome, and I'm glad I know you.
Thank
And
you.
and I'm really glad you came on, so thank you so much. And, yeah, thanks y'all for listening, thanks for tuning in, I hopefully it touched your heart, and if you think of someone who, not everybody has to go through what you went through, at such a young age, and I think it just helps so much to know that there's somebody else out there who has a shared experience, and just like your mom, there's no telling how many people you're helping by sharing your story. So thank you. Thank you for your bravery, and thank you all for tuning in. All right. See you next time.